Success isn't just about strategy, it's about trust. At Bose Public Affairs Group, we put clients first with responsiveness, integrity, and a focus on results. Our team includes former policymakers and government leaders who anticipate issues, navigate challenges, and build winning strategies. From the halls of Congress to the state capitol to City Hall, we understand great outcomes start with listening. Bose Public Affairs Group.
Bose means business.
Thank you for joining us on Crossroads Politics here on WTHR+. I'm Emily Longnecker. We start today with the news that Indiana State Senator Rod Bray will not run to continue as Senate President Pro Tem. Bray drew the anger of President Trump and his supporters after he voted against redistricting. Bray has led the Senate since 2018, but the failure of the president's redistricting effort led to primaries for the Republicans who opposed it and were up for election this year. Almost all of them lost those primaries. Bray cited the threat in his announcement, saying, "Given promises to recruit and fund primary challengers for any senator who support Bray's bid to remain the leader of the Senate, he has determined he will not put members in jeopardy from their own party simply because he is asking members to support his reelection as pro tem." I want to bring in Nikki Kelly, editor of the Capitol Chronicle. Nikki, we've seen, we've known that Bray would face an uphill battle to retain his leadership role. Are you surprised by this announcement today?
A little bit, but I think he pointed out the big thing is, I think if it was just about him and his reelection, he would be all in still. But, we've gone from trying to defeat people who actually opposed redistricting to now trying to defeat people who maybe supported redistricting, but they also support Rod Bray. And so he just doesn't want to put them in that position of having to choose between their own seats and his leadership.
Who do you see stepping up to try and replace him?
I mean, the two names that have been out there for a while are Senator Chris Garton. Mm-hmm. He was the number 2 leader in the Senate until June, when he stepped down from that, saying his beliefs no longer aligned with Bray's. So ever since he announced that, everyone has assumed he's going to seek it. I've also heard that Senator Scott Baldwin is interested, mm-hmm. so that's a possibility. He hasn't really spoken on it, but those are the two names we're hearing the most.
And if you remember, Garden gave a pretty impassioned speech about the importance of redistricting during that vote. I mean, it's hard to forget because...
He absolutely did. Now, having said that, they definitely disagreed on redistricting, but they voted alike on most other major issues, that came before the Senate, but that was a big one that they disagreed on.
Okay, well, we're going to see what happens. This is going to be developing quite a bit of news that just dropped.
And just so viewers understand, the decision won't be made until after the November election, because all the new members, the new senators, will then get to vote on the leader for the chamber.
But people are going to be lining up. A bit of a parlor game right now.
Horse trading.
Yeah.
Because the leader also gets to appoint committee chairs. So now that's one thing you say, I'll support you if I get to share this committee. I mean, it's just sort of the horse trading that goes with it.
Okay, sit tight. We're going to come back to you in a bit. The challenge to one of Indiana's closest state Senate races is moving forward. This week, the Indiana Recount Commission made several decisions in Paula Copenhaver's challenge of Senator Spencer Deary's narrow victory in Senate District 23. I was there at the hearing to find out what was decided and what still needs to be done. One of the major decisions the Recount Commission made this week was to say that the Copenhaver campaign could not bring in voters to testify under oath about voting in the Republican primary. 3 votes. That's all that separates incumbent Senator Spencer Deary's declared victory in the race for Senate District 23 from his challenger, Paula Copenhaver. But the Copenhaver team says some of the ballots cast for Deary came from voters who were Democrats and independents who don't normally vote for Republican candidates.
Every Republican that voted in this Republican primary in this district should be upset to know that there were Democrats who voted in the Republican primary with no intention to support our Republican Party in the fall.
State law says in order to vote in a party's primary, you're required to have voted for a majority of that party's candidates in the last general election or plan to do so in the upcoming one. Copenhaver's team wanted to question under oath 11 voters who they said posted on social media about voting for Deary in the primary, but said they intended to vote for the Democratic candidate in November. In a hearing Tuesday, in a vote of 2-1, the Recount Commission denied their request.
It's a process. Like everything that there is, there's a process and it's being played out. And so we just go to the next step.
That next step comes in 3 weeks. That's when the Recount Commission will go over some 300 ballots cast for Deary that the Copenhagen campaign is challenging. Deary's attorney says those challenges concern her to some extent.
I also have to place my beliefs and trust in the system and process, and that we aren't going to disenfranchise Hoosier voters, several hundred of them, over wishes of one losing candidate. We can't.
Even after losing the request to bring in voters to testify, Copenhagen said she's letting the challenge process play out. So you're still hopeful that you will come out the winner when this is all said and done?
I'm still confident that our campaign will prevail.
The Recount Commission has set aside August 18th through the 20th to go over each challenge ballot. Keep in mind that the State Board of Accounts has already done a recount of all the ballots cast in the primary, and they came up with that same 3-vote lead for Deary. Time is ticking on this effort. Election results need to be certified by August 21st. That leaves the commission just 1 day to decide whether any challenge ballots change this result. So, Nikki, no change in the vote count yet. Were you surprised by what happened at the hearing this week?
I mean, I don't think so. It was going to be a very novel use of the state law, and I just didn't see that they would go that way. I was a little surprised that Diego Morales, voted against the use of the depositions against the voters. He didn't really explain why. He said he didn't think it was appropriate, but he didn't really explain why. But some people have noted that, he was recently beaten at the Republican convention, and so then he, moved against this Trump Republican move. But yeah, so interesting. I mean, the 300 ballots, I think, is a lot, and likely would maybe split down the middle. There are a few individual ballots, one in Park County and one in Tippecanoe County, that have specific questions about when they were counted and added.
Yes.
So those two are probably going to be more important than the overall 300.
In fact, they wanted to bring in the county clerk from Tippecanoe County to ask about this ballot that the Copenhagen team says was discovered the next day in a bag and counted in for Spencer Deary with kind of not any oversight was their allegation. And then Deary's attorney was saying at the hearing, wait, that's not how I heard it went down, basically.
And the clerk also put out a statement that day refuting it. And so, she says that it was always under proper chain of custody, and there were some allegations that she personally opened it. She said that absolutely not. And so those are the types of issues that they're going to get to more in the upcoming hearings in August.
And that's going to take some time, right, to go over. They have to go over 300 ballots. So that is each one they look at.
And it's a little unclear kind of what is the question about those 300 ballots.
Correct.
They're not really discussing why they're challenging those. Was there a machine issue? We just don't know the basis of those 300 ballots and those 300 are from both sides. So, it's not like, Paula Copenhagen is claiming these 300. Like, if both sides are going to challenge, then you might see them kind of cancel each other out in the grand scheme of things.
300 ballots, though, 3 days to do it. They need the 3 days.
I would think so. I would need to understand the basis. If a clump of them are related to one of the same issue, then they could debate one issue and a clump would be moved to the side. But they haven't really explained individually what the challenges are.
Do you expect legal challenges no matter what the commission decides?
Yeah, I think maybe. I think Paula Copenhagen is probably considering appealing the issue about being able to pull in the voters and ask them about their vote and whether they met the state law for primary voting. I think it could ultimately show that law is unenforceable. But in the meantime, lawmakers are going to come back in January and likely close Indiana's primaries, and this will be, case number one that they'll show. So it would be a sort of short-term win, though a big win for her if she would be allowed to move forward for that.
I mean, there was a lot of discussion about that at the hearing. Is this something that lawmakers need to come in and deal with in the next session?
I don't know that they could theoretically retroactively deal with it. I'm not sure legally that would be allowed. I'm not an attorney, but I mean, these votes already happened, and I'm not sure what they would be able to put into law that would affect a prior election.
So you think Copenhagen's team is still going to try and bring in these voters that have questions about
I mean, I think they could easily appeal this decision to, file a lawsuit and appeal the decision just through any court challenges.
At that hearing, they made an oral motion at the end to try and say, okay, from the 18th to the 20th, let's try and bring these folks in, and it was defeated. So,
correct.
I mean, but you think they're going to try and appeal?
Well,
that?
anytime an administrative board in state government makes a decision, you have a right to contest that decision and have a judge look at it. So.
Fascinating stuff. We're going to see. The 18th through the 20th is going to tell us some things for sure.
Exactly.
It's going to be some long days potentially. So.
Definitely.
Buckle up. Okay. Childcare is one of the biggest expenses many families face. While the state considers changes it says could help reduce costs, childcare advocates are proposing a very different solution, one that involves splitting the bill.
We don't watch children. We educate children.
That approach to early childcare is what will bring Corey Kearns to the Indiana State House again next Monday. That's when the state will hear for the second time from daycare providers about proposed changes to childcare regulations.
There is more listening to be done.
Kearns is hopeful the state, especially Governor Braun, is hearing the daycare providers' concerns about the changes, especially surrounding a proposal to lower education requirements for staff at daycare centers. The state and supporters say cutting regulations will reduce administrative costs that get passed on to parents and increase the cost of childcare.
What is the fear with fewer regulations?
Safety.
Braun has said recently he welcomes the pushback about the proposed changes and will take it into account before making a final decision. The administration has pushed businesses to become part of the child care solution, including backing expanded tax credits for employers that help cover child care costs. Kearns says that's a step in the right direction and believes employers, the state, and parents should all share the cost of care.
That way everybody is invested in the infrastructure of the child care workforce.
Kearns says she and other child care advocates have been speaking with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle before Monday's hearing.
We've presented solutions to the appropriate parties. It's up to them to bring that to the table.
She hopes if the state's going to try and lower the cost of child care for Hoosier families, it doesn't come from regulation changes she says will force daycare providers to react. Instead, she hopes the efforts to make child care more affordable start with policy discussions with lawmakers, where child care providers have a seat at the table.
So Monday's public hearing starts at 10 a.m. Nikki, a big part of Indiana's problem is a shortage of available childcare. Easing some standards can make finding workers easier, but if getting paid, better is harder and part of the problem, could that cause even more problems?
Yeah, I mean, you might certainly have more applications, right? If you don't have to have a bachelor's degree or certain training. But the question is, you're going to pay them less, obviously. If they don't have the training, you're going to be able to pay them less. There's already turnover considering the pay they get now. So if you lower the pay, then you're going to have more turnover. They kind of work against each other.
Mm-hmm. Corey Kearns, when I was speaking with her yesterday, she said, okay, so you hire someone at a with fewer education requirements, and then you train them, and then do they move on to the next step to get better training? And then here the daycare is they don't have a chance to move up those levels in the pass of quality.
Yeah, I mean, and that can definitely happen. There are certainly issues with every suggestion out there, and there is no silver bullet, and I hate that cliche, but it's true in this, whether you're talking about subsidies or regulation changes, I mean, they just all work together so much, and quality. It's one thing to say, yes, we need more seats, we need more employees, but if we get those at the expense of quality, then that's a question too.
Ms. Kearns told me yesterday that she's been hearing and talking with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. Are you hearing anything from lawmakers about if they have any ideas or what they want to address with this or how they would tackle this issue?
I mean, not yet, but we're, in the middle of an election season, and 125 of 150 of them have a race, so, are up for elections. So a lot of them are busy working on election stuff. I expect, bill filings and things to happen starting in a few months. I think they knew last year that we're going to have to work more on childcare, and now Governor Braun has made it a priority for him in this upcoming session, so it'll definitely be a key topic.
Any of these proposed rule changes, though, the governor has to sign off on. So do you expect him to sign off on some of these before the next legislative session?
Absolutely. I mean, it's his agencies who came up with the rule changes, so I don't know why he would be against them. Like, I don't understand why he would propose them, their agencies would propose them if he didn't like them.
But when he says, hey, he's hearing some of the pushback and he's looking at some of the feedback, and he did say, to be fair, I'm not sure that I'll follow it, but we are listening and taking it into account. You don't
well,
think...
because they can make changes, and that's what these public hearings are about, is people come in and maybe, you point out something small and they can tweak it in the final rule that would be published. And so that's what these public hearings are about.
So that's more what you expect. Yeah. Okay. All right, sit tight. We're coming back to you in a bit. Indiana's gas tax holiday is set to expire on August 7th. When it was last extended, the U.S. and Iran were in talks to end their months-long conflict, and gas prices were falling. Since then, the fighting has resumed, pushing gas prices back up. According to AAA, the average price of a gallon of gas was $3.56 this week. When the tax holiday expires, that will shoot up by 61 cents. We'll go from the cheapest gas in the country to the top 20 most expensive. Nikki, that is going to be a shock for Hoosiers.
Yeah, it couldn't come at a worse time for the governor. I think when he originally put this sales tax holiday out there, he thought it would be a quick skirmish in the Middle East, and President Trump had promised that it would be over in a month or two, and I don't think he expected it to still be going on, so that basically we're going to be in the same exact position we were in April when this thing comes off. Now, luckily, we've saved some money in between. More than $500 million in taxes Hoosier drivers have saved during that time, but it's going to be a sticker shock.
So we know the governor's out of options with what he can do. Do you expect lawmakers to try and address this issue in any way?
Yeah, I mean, they can come in for a special session. The governor would have to call the special session, but I haven't really heard any appetite for that. Not only is it, campaign season, special sessions are pretty unpopular, and to continue to not collect those taxes puts more pressure on all the road funding. Do you want bridges and potholes filled, that kind of thing. Now, there is a sort of outside fringe speculation out there that he could go ahead and do it for another time and, see if anyone would sue, but as long as anyone didn't sue, saying that it violated the statute, but that would be pretty out there.
I think we're going to start hearing from a lot of Hoosiers, though, when that expires, and they're going to be feeling that pinch. All of us, really, right? It's not filling up was expensive before that holiday went into effect.
Yeah, and it originally was 30 days, and we got 4 months out of it. It was originally just the sales tax, and instead he became the first governor in Indiana history to also suspend the gas tax itself. Right. So we've definitely gotten a break, but it's going to be over soon.
All good things come to an end, I guess, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Governor Braun is also responding to a letter sent this week about the Office of Public Access Counselor, WTHR, the Capitol Chronicle, and several other Indiana journalists sent the letter threatening to sue if the Office of the Counselor didn't get better about issuing opinions. The counselor's job is to help state agencies comply with public access laws. According to the Indy Star, which joined us on the letter, the current counselor, Jennifer Ruby, is taking more than 200 days to issue opinions. State law requires a 30-day turnaround. The letter journalists sent said in part, the end result is that instead of helping facilitate agencies' compliance with public records laws, the OPAC has become a black hole into which complaints disappear indefinitely. Governor Braun has responded, saying he is shifting 2 staff members to help the office, bringing its staff to 5. Nikki, why the backlog, and do you expect this change to make any kind of difference?
Well, I hope it makes a difference, definitely. I do want to point out that one of the members he's going to shift over to help the backlog is already being paid by the public access counselor. The governor's office has a number of staff members in his office doing things for the governor, but that are funded out of different agencies, and the PAC is one of them. So we already had 1 of 3 PAC employees being paid from that budget, not doing PAC work. So he's basically shifting that person over now, because that's where the salary is coming from. And they're also going to add an administrative staff person to help. The first person is a lawyer who can actually help rule on the issues at hand. But yeah, I mean, and it's not just the 30-day issuance. Previously the PAC was available to kind of avoid some of these complaints. You could call up, they would just pick up the phone and you would say, I don't know, do I have a right to this? And they would say, no, under this law you don't. And then you just moved on, right? And so that maybe helped on the front end to avoid some of the work on the back end. That's not happening. You can't get a hold of anyone. They don't answer emails. They don't answer the phone, nothing.
And that's an important tool for journalists, right?
And not just journalists, the public. A lot of these, when you would look at these opinions over the years, are people in local communities trying to find out what their city council is doing, or they're trying to get a report from the local sheriff's department. This is far more than just state agencies and journalists.
I mean, and the governor talks a lot and speaks a lot about transparency and how he wants to be transparent and wants his administration transparent. So do you think having this happen doesn't square up quite, right? I mean,
absolutely, and I think that's why he reacted so quickly. Also, I think getting a lawsuit threat in that letter, I think they could see that just number-wise, they were not meeting statutory requirements.
Yeah, and for the 4th time since December, Governor Braun has made a new appointment to the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission. Joby Gerals is replacing outgoing Commissioner David Valletta. Gerals worked previously as an ethics counsel for the U.S. Army and former Vice President Mike Pence. Gerals is replacing former Commissioner David Valletta, who resigned after 4 years as commissioner and 17 years working for the commission. Nikki, with the exception of the 36-year commissioner David Zeigner, this is a commission that has been appointed by Governor Braun. So do you expect changes then?
Yeah, 4 out of 5 members will have been appointed by Governor Braun. Now, having said that, the most recent case that caused the shuffle with AES Indiana, 3 out of the 5 commissioners were appointed by Governor Braun, and they still approved a pretty large rate increase. So, we'll have to see. They are reconsidering that rate increase, so we'll have to see if any votes change with this new member. David Valletta did approve that AES, so a new person could impact the vote, but that's just a to be seen.
Yeah. To be seen. Well, we'll be there. You can find all of those stories right now on the Indiana Capitol Chronicle's website. Could President Trump withdraw his pick for Attorney General?
Hey, 158 days, they can try it again, roll the dice on what the Senate confirmation process looks like next year.
Coming up, how Republican infighting could hold up a new leader for the DOJ, plus the latest salvo in the Iran conflict.
But we're going to follow the law.
It's a huge distraction.
Really, it's only going to affect our high school students.
And cell phones in the classroom no more as kids head back to school. How state law is forcing them to leave their devices behind. Next on Crossroads Politics. Welcome back. This week, tens of thousands of Hoosier kids and teachers went back to school. Students are starting the fall semester across central Indiana this week, and they're going back with a new statewide cell phone ban in place. The new law bans cell phones for the entire school day. Our Samantha Johnson breaks down what this means for students and parents.
Supporters will tell you banning cell phones during the school day is all about improving grades and letting kids be kids. And at one of the largest school districts in the state, the superintendent says it's not about punishing students.
But we're going to follow the law. And the first part of that is making sure everybody knows what the law is and what it says. And then we'll deal with situations as they arise.
Hamilton Southeastern and these Marion County townships follow the same rules, keeping phones out of kids' hands from bell to bell. Wireless devices have to be turned off and stored away. That includes phones, smartwatches, and other devices that can connect to the internet. And this is for the entire school day during lunch and passing periods, too.
It's a huge distraction.
State Senator Jeff Rotz co-authored the new policy. He says schools that already do this report more social interaction, too.
All of a sudden, the lunchroom goes from fairly quiet to what you'd expect with 100 or 500 young people.
One of the biggest concerns we are hearing from parents is communicating with children during an emergency. How do I know my child is safe? Senator Rotz tells me many school resource officers support this change, saying they need students to pay attention in case of an emergency. And then when it's safe, schools can decide to reunite students with their phones. Now, where students will store their phones often depends on how old they are. Usually lockers or backpacks. Pockets are not an option. And in some buildings, like Wayne Township, this won't be a major change.
In our K-8 buildings, that's been the case. Really, it's only going to affect our high school students who, up till last year, were able to use their phones during passing periods and during lunch.
Plus, there are exceptions to the rule, like during emergencies, for medical needs, or if it's incorporated in a student's IEP. So the new school year is on, and phones are off. In Marion County, Samantha Johnson, 13 News.
Indiana Congressman Andre Carson says ICE has responded to his inquiries about the facility inside the Miami Correctional Facility here in Indiana. Carson sent the inquiry after 2 detainees died there in ICE custody. ICE's response said both deaths were under investigation, but that it's ICE policy to provide comprehensive health care for detainees. ICE's response included that the Miami Correctional Facility has not been inspected for compliance with the agency's rules. That first inspection is scheduled to happen between September 15th and the 17th. Of the 1,000 beds set aside for ICE detainees, the agency says the average daily population is 463. Carson shared the response from ICE along with a statement that read in part, ICE's response to my letter only deepens those concerns. ICE now acknowledges that detainees at Miami Correctional missed a staggering 799 doses of medication. This is gravely concerning, and these figures demand immediate scrutiny. An Indiana Star investigation found a huge backlog of medical treatment in that facility, which spurred Governor Braun to order a full review of conditions. Nikki, this is a federal agency operating in a Indiana state facility. How much can the state do?
Kind of, though. These are state employees. The guards and the nurses and the doctors are state employees, so they're not federal employees. So Indiana still has quite a bit of control on that. And so they should be making sure that staffing's appropriate. You know, whether you agree or disagree with deportation, I would hope everyone agrees that while in custody, they should be, you know, given basic human rights of getting their medication and making sure they get treatment for things they need.
I mean, when we've asked the governor in the past about looking into conditions or, you know, checking on things, he has basically said, look, this is ICE's responsibility. They're the ones in charge.
I mean, I think they're trying to let ICE handle most of the talking, but again, these are not federal employees. These are state employees. We have a contract with the federal government, but that's our property, that's our employees. And if anyone gets sued, you can better believe that the state Indiana Department of Correction is going to be included.
Okay, well, we're going to see what this review brings, right? All right, who will control Congress? New polls shed light on that question with only a few months to go before the 2026 midterm elections.
Facing an uphill battle with some Republicans to get his pick for Attorney General confirmed in the Senate, President Trump now says he might run out the clock. I'm Chris Plone in Washington. I'll explain coming up.
Welcome back. As the Iran conflict continues, President Trump is in conflict with senators from his own party. Chris Plone is in Washington, where the fight has the president considering pulling his nominee for Attorney General.
No confirmation vote yet on President Trump's pick to lead the Department of Justice. Republicans say acting AG Todd Blanche doesn't have the votes to be confirmed for now. President Trump's pick for Attorney General Todd Blanche in limbo. 2 Republican senators holding out for guarantees in writing from the Justice Department. Now the president threatening to bypass holdout Senators John Cornyn and Tom Tillis altogether by running out the clock. I have no objection to temporarily withdrawing Todd's name if they do not do the right thing, the president posted on social media, saying he'll wait until the new Congress convenes in January, putting him back after Cornyn and Tillis are out of office. But that's assuming Republicans retain control of the Senate.
Hey, 158 days, they can try it again, roll the dice on what the Senate confirmation process looks like next year.
The senators want changes to a settlement agreement between President Trump and the IRS and a written pledge that a Department of Justice anti-weaponization fund will not be established. Critics fear that fund could use taxpayer money to pay off the president's allies who claim they've been unfairly prosecuted.
The fact that they're balking at putting that in writing tells me that they were hoping to get by with this settlement agreement and his testimony and then revitalize those provisions at a later date.
The domestic roadblock for the president coming as the war against Iran takes a new turn. A senior law enforcement official telling NBC News that a cyber attack on more than 30 municipal water systems across Minnesota this week points to Iranian-backed hackers, though the official cautions the forensic analysis is still in its early stages.
We've never had a similar incident, so this is the first.
The administration advising water systems across the country to take steps now to fend off similar cyber attacks. And today, signs of progress in the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. President Trump announcing a deal has been reached for Hamas to disarm and Israel to withdraw its forces from Gaza. It comes 9 months after the two sides signed a ceasefire agreement, but no timetable for implementation has been announced. In Washington, Chris Pallone, NBC News.
A new poll by CNN gives Democrats an 8-point generic ballot lead. It also found Democratic voters are much more motivated than Republican voters. And that does it for this week's episode of Crossroads Politics. I'm Emily Longnecker. For Nikki, Sam, and all of us here at 13 News, thanks for watching. We hope to see you next time.